of dreams, of a rose, and of falling down a long flight of steps.
I reviewed The Exorcist for Halloween a few years ago, and while it's a great, seminal entry in the horror genre, William Peter Blatty's Exorcist III is even better. Ignoring the events of Exorcist II, Exorcist III follows Lieutenant Kinderman, George C. Scott, as he investigates a recent spate of murders. These murders resemble the MO of the Gemini Killer, who was executed 15 years ago. Kinderman comes to realize that something far more sinister and otherworldly than just murder is afoot. Exorcist III feels like the original film while still trying new things, as it's essentially a murder mystery beneath the demonic possession. This film is very well written. I love the dialogue, especially the witty banter between Kinderman and his friend Father Dyer, as it's insightful and detailed while still emotional and avoiding the feel of an info dump. You can tell Exorcist III was written by a novelist, but not in a bad way of feeling too much like a book. Exorcist III is the type of brainy horror movie that we need more of. It's scary and unsettling on a psychological, conceptual level. The film is honestly tantalizing in a grim way. You are intrigued by the ongoing Gemini murders and the mysterious patient in the disturbed ward, and you want to know more even as the whole thing profoundly unnerves you. Veteran actor George C. Scott is more subtle and restrained than usual, but still snappingly angry when needed, but the true standout is the double act of Jason Miller returning as Father Karras and the ever-sinister Brad Dourif as the Gemini Killer. A spoiler warning is now in effect for anyone who hasn't seen Exorcist III. In an ingeniously layered casting choice, Miller plays the patient in the disturbed ward as Kinderman sees him, as the body of his old friend Father Karras, and Dourif plays him as who he really is, the lingering spirit of the Gemini Killer. It all comes back to Pazuzu, the demonic antagonist of the Exorcist franchise. Father Karras's suicide at the end of the first film to save Regan and remove Pazuzu from his own body roughly coincided with the execution of the Gemini Killer, and in retaliation for losing Karras, Pazuzu transferred the Gemini Killer's spirit into his body. It took the Gemini Killer 15 long years, or maybe it was 20.
20 long years
to regrow Karras's broken brain, but now that he has, he in turn possesses catatonic patients in the hospital to carry out his murders by night. Anyway, the true nature of the murders and the unfolding connection between the Gemini Killer, Karras, and Pazuzu offer a brilliantly chilling progression that grips your attention tightly. Miller plays the Gemini Killer, or his shell, with subtle arrogance, but Dourif plays him with both a ferocious rage and, more subtly, an intimidating, deeply unnerving pride and patience, as he softly gloats about the craftsmanship of his killings. Brad Dourif has a knack for invoking seemingly effortless menace, and he's amazing here. Exorcist III also has some very well executed sequences of tension and sparse, quite artfully done shock/gross-out moments. I also love this absurd dream sequence of Kinderman walking through a strangely vaudevillian heaven, as it feels like a Brazil or Franklin-esque take on the afterlife. Sequels tend to get a bad reputation, but Exorcist III turned out to be a really good horror movie. It's a tense, fascinating, and finely crafted film with some great performances and imagery. The Exorcist III earns 4 stars out of 5. Thanks for watching. Cheers.